You think it's over between you, that this person has forgotten you, replaced you, erased you from their life. But what if I told you that at this very moment, something is stirring in their heart? What if you weren't erased, but simply being revealed? What you don't see, Allah is silently working on. What you think is over is perhaps just beginning. There are awakenings that don't come from love at first sight, but from a divine call. And when Allah opens someone's eyes to you, it's never by chance. In this video, you will discover the invisible signs, the spiritual movements, and the silent emotions that Allah places in the heart of the one He intends for you. It's not magic. It's greater. It's awakening, and maybe you're about to be seen, truly seen. Stay until the end. You might finally understand why you feel so much, without ever being seen the way you deserve. 1. What if you weren't forgotten? Have you ever wondered why your heart clings on when everything seems to tell you to let go? Why is it that, despite the silences, despite the absence of visible signs, there is a fragile peace within you, a deep intuition that you must not turn the page? It's not a whim of your soul. It's not an obsession. Perhaps it's a trace of the divine. There is a reality that few accept when they suffer. Allah works in the invisible. And what you believe to be abandonment is sometimes the exact place where He shapes the most beautiful answers. You think this person has forgotten you. You think they leave peacefully while you struggle between silent prayers and nights filled with questions. But Allah does not synchronize hearts like human clocks. He prepares them according to a celestial time, a time of wisdom. You continue to move forward, a little worn out, a little drained, but still connected to a certainty you can't explain. Something is happening, even if I can't see it. What if this intuition were true? What if at this very moment, Allah were sowing your name in the soul of the one you're waiting for? Not through a message, not through a photo or an interaction, but through an inner change, an invisible call, a spiritual recognition. Because sometimes Allah awakens a heart in silence. And when He does, the other person begins to remember you for no reason, to think of you in their prayers without understanding why, to perceive you differently, as if a light had been turned on. And you, meanwhile, you think you've been forgotten. But in reality, you're being kept, set aside, not out of rejection, but to be revealed at the right time. Allah never places two souls on the same path without reason. But He chooses with a perfection our impatience cannot grasp. And what you mistake for a void is sometimes a sacred space where He prepares the meeting, not of two bodies, but of two destinies. Do not be deceived by what you cannot see. The invisible in Allah is always more real than anything you could imagine. And while you doubt, while you perhaps cry, while you pretend to move forward, perhaps a heart on the other side begins to turn. Journey sincerely, and not toward just anyone, toward you. 2. The invisible story Allah writes. There was nothing exceptional about that morning. The alarm clock rings as usual. He opens his eyes, goes through the same routine, but there's something different, a detail, a presence, an image he hadn't summoned, but which imposes itself on him. It's your face, not a photo, not a specific memory, just an impression, clear, persistent, like an imprint left on his heart while he slept. He doesn't understand, he doesn't search, but he feels that something has touched him without him knowing where or how. and all day long your name dances somewhere in his chest. He tries to ignore it, to rationalize, but it's not an ordinary thought. It's like a reminder from a place he can't control. Then he remembers. One day, he crossed paths with you, perhaps briefly, perhaps in a vague context. But that day, nothing had left a lasting impression on him. Until today. Today, he remembers. Not what you were wearing, not what you said. He remembers the effect your presence left. And the more he thinks about it, the more he feels it's no coincidence. Because he's not looking for anyone. He doesn't want to force anything. But Allah has His own ways of bringing someone back into your heart. Not through logic, but through a feeling that's impossible to extinguish. He's beginning to see you differently. Not as someone he's crossed paths with, not as a mere memory, but as a light he'd never been able to recognize. And this change isn't his own. He knows it. He feels it. It comes from higher up, as if Allah were gently whispering to him, "Look again, this time with your soul." And then everything changes. You are no longer vague. You are no longer anecdotal. You are obvious. Not because you showed yourself, but because Allah revealed you. He begins to think back on your exchanges, the silences between you, the moments he had never understood. And now, everything makes sense. Not in logic, but in faith. Allah wrote this story in a way he had never been able to read. But today, a page has turned. And your name shines in it with a new clarity. Not as a choice, but as something obvious, engraved in the invisible.
3. When his heart changes. For no apparent reason. You gave it your all, your patience, your prayers, your tears that no one saw. You gritted your teeth when they told you, move on. But how can you turn the page when your heart remains stuck in this one? You thought you'd let go, you pretended to forget. You even said to Allah, I'll let you decide.
Even if it hurts me. And you got up every morning with an emptiness you no longer dared to explain. Because you yourself no longer understood why you still felt something. But then, one day, you feel something has shifted. Not in you, in him. A detail, a little attention, a different look. He begins to ask questions, to pay attention to things he didn't know he was aware of. He moves closer, slowly, not as someone who wants, but as someone who feels. And you stay there. You observe. You don't want to get your hopes up too quickly. You've learned to survive without answers. But what you perceive is not your imagination. It's a heart that changes, not by your effort, not by your words, but because Allah has turned the key. You know, there are locks that no human love can open. But when Allah decides to awaken a heart, even the coldest, even the blindest, begins to beat differently. It's as if what you felt all this time is now transmitted to the other. A reverse echo, a wave that returns to him long after you sent it. He doesn't know why he misses you. He doesn't understand why your name comes back to him in the middle of prayer, or why he thinks of you when he hears a banal word, but you know. You recognize that thrill, that holy confusion. You recognize it because you carried it alone for months, maybe years. And now, he begins to walk toward you. Not in a hurry, not loud, but real. He feels what you carried in silence. And this time, it's not you running, it's him waking up. as if Allah had just placed His hand on his heart to whisper, "Look, she's still there. She's never stopped being so." And you say nothing. You watch. Maybe you cry, but they are no longer tears of pain. They are tears that know that something invisible has just been heard. For Allah makes feelings grow in hearts like He makes flowers grow after drought. For a long time, all you saw was a desert, a dry, silent landscape, devoid of life. Your heart was lost there like a directionless caravan. You looked at the horizon, day after day, hoping for a sign, a movement, proof that love was not dead, that a heart could still open to you. But the sky remained clear, too clear. No clouds, no rain, just that harsh light of indifference, just the dust of faded memories. And then, one day, without warning, rain fell. Not a storm, not a tempest of passion. No, a gentle rain, silent, merciful, the kind that destroys nothing, but awakens everything. In this heart that had ignored you, a drop settled. In this ground you thought barren, a forgotten seed began to vibrate. And you hadn't planted this seed. You hadn't watered it. It was Allah who breathed it there one distant day, without your knowledge. And now, He makes it grow, slowly, carefully, as He makes greenery spring forth from cracked earth, as He colors dead branches with sudden springs. You are not the gardener. You are simply the light toward which this shoot begins to turn. He looks at you again, but this time, His eyes see. Not your appearance, but the brightness you radiated from the beginning. He sees it the way one finally notices a flower they had trampled underfoot without ever seeing it. And that flower is you, not because you've become more beautiful, but because her gaze has become purified, because Allah opened her eyes at the exact moment her heart was becoming fertile. The love you were waiting for didn't fall from the sky by chance. It's a shoot born in the invisible, watered by prayers you said when you thought no one was listening. And that shoot becomes a tree that gently leans towards you, not because of your efforts, but because mercy rained down, where you thought that there would never be anything again.
5. How do you know if Allah is truly opening His heart to you? You ask yourself this question, over and over again. Is it true? Is it a sign? Or is it just my heart holding on? You're afraid to imagine, afraid of believing for nothing. So you look at every detail, you listen to every gesture, you decipher every look as if it carried a divine answer. But deep down, you're exhausted from looking for signs in unstable things. So think differently. Does His presence soothe you or agitate you? Because when Allah opens a heart for you, it's not a race, it's not a fire that consumes you. It's a gentle peace that invades you, even in the midst of doubt. You feel there's nothing to force, nothing to prove, nothing to manipulate. You don't feel fragile, nor in competition with your own silence. You feel that something is settling, quietly, like a dove on your shoulder. Is He starting to look at you differently? Not with the eyes of envy, not with the hunger of someone who takes, but with the gaze of someone who sees your soul before your body. The one who lowers his gaze not out of fear, but out of respect. The one who speaks to you without seeking to seduce you, but to understand you. Do His intentions become clear, aligned, and clean? When a heart opens under the will of Allah, it becomes luminous in its choices. He doesn't hide, He doesn't play. He doesn't create gray areas where you have to guess what you represent. You feel direction, not ambiguity.
Even if he doesn't say everything, his behavior is consistent. Even in his silence, you feel the spiritual stability taking hold. Does his presence elevate you? You don't sink lower by becoming attached. You don't stray from your prayers hoping for his attention. On the contrary, you feel more connected, more lucid, more grounded. Because the love that Allah allows reminds you of Allah. It doesn't distract you from Him. It brings you back to Him. So, how do you know if Allah is truly opening His heart to you? You don't need 1,000 external proofs, because the true sign, you feel it within. It's that unusual calm, that subtle relief, that moment when your soul stops running, because it has just understood. It wasn't you who imposed yourself on His heart. It was Allah who placed you there, gently, quietly, but with certainty. 6. The moment Allah reveals your name in someone's soul. There is a secret moment, a moment invisible to the eyes of the world, a moment when the invisible decides to make itself felt. It is then that Allah whispers, "Now, let him or her see." It is not a flash, not a loud crash. It is a breath, an imperceptible movement, an intimate shift in a sleeping soul. His heart, until then closed, turns. He no longer looks at a simple silhouette. He no longer sees a face or a past story. He looks at your essence, that inner light that no one can erase, that reflection of the soul, shining in the silence, in the waiting, in the prayers you have never ceased to offer. In this sacred silence, in this infinite modesty, He begins to love you, not with the blind passion of fairy tales, but with the purity of a love that is born without being immediately understood. Because Allah opened a veil for him. He showed him what you had always known. You were not a mistake. You were not a mirage in a desert. You were that obvious truth. That answer he had been searching for without knowing it. A hidden treasure that Allah revealed to him at the perfect time. That moment is a silent promise. A silent pact between two souls that only the Creator can seal. A moment when hearts align, long before words come. And you stand there, witnessing this miracle. You feel that peace that comes from above, that certainty that no wait is in vain, that no wound is forgotten, that in Allah's perfect plan, your name is engraved in the soul of the one destined for you. What you're experiencing, it may not be a lack of love. It's a time of preparation. Allah doesn't open a heart for no reason. If He's awakening someone to your existence, it's because your name has been written higher, long before you realized it. So don't rush. Don't force anything. But be ready. Because when a heart opens at the right time, it never closes again. Tell me in the comments if you feel this silent connection with someone. Save this video if it speaks to what your heart is going through. And above all, share it with anyone who needs to understand. We don't always choose who we love. But Allah chooses perfectly who will end up loving us.